Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hey, babies. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone. Did you see my classic against our arch rival Pittsburgh last night?
That was a good game.
It was a good game.
It's a fun game. I was off. Way off.
Capitals won. Scored a bunch of goals early. Hung on for dear life.
Their goalie ruined it for them. That's what happened.
Whatever. We'll take it. Points for us on the road.
You'll like this stat, by the way. I'm sure they said it on the broadcast. Well, I don't know if they said it on the broadcast because it's ESPN. They're a little lacking on their stats department, but I think you'll like this one. Tom Wilson scored his 11th goal of the season last night. It was also his 11th goal against the Penguins, more than any other team he's faced.
That's pretty good.
Figured you'll like that one. He has scored more against the Penguins than any other team. That's a guy you like having on your squad.
This is an incredible Week 18 that's coming up here. Starting quarterbacks around the NFL include Sam Howell, Carson Wentz, and Taylor Heineke. All of them are starting this weekend. How amazing is that? Boy, does that feel full circle to me. Carson Wentz is starting for the Rams because they're locked in as a wild card. So they're going to sit Matthew Stafford. Taylor Heineke is starting for the Falcons. And oh, by the way, apparently, according to Tankathon, is going to have a lot of say of what number pick we're going to have by the end of all of this.
Right.
Apparently, if the Falcons beat the Saints, that's bad for us.
Okay, yeah. So we
supposedly,
the Saints. Yeah,
correct. Right, because all the strength of schedule stuff.
Yes,
that's bad for us. And then, of course, Sam Howell just got announced today as the starter again.
Yeah,
because Jacoby Brissett is still dealing with a hamstring injury, and fortunately, they're not going to go the Jake Fromm bus. We're not going to do that. So they're going to send Sam back. So you're send Sam back out.
How could you forget? There's one more you missed.
Who's that?
Trevor Siemian stepping in for Zach Wilson.
Trevor Siemian is stepping in for. Well, I mean, I'm just talking about from us last year, our three quarterbacks.
Oh, got it.
If I told you that all three of them would be starting in Week 18, would you have believed me?
No, I would not have believed
you. Okay.
One of them's
on a playoff team, and if I said, guess which one's on a playoff team, I don't think you would have guessed that one.
Out of giving it some thought, I probably would have guessed Wentz because there's no way he should be starting a game that matters.
Okay.
I think I would have actually gone with that logic. And I would have said Sam stayed healthy all year. That's all that would have been. And Heineke, it's the NFC South, so everything boils down. Yeah.
Well, it's going to be one of those. I'm sure their fans are probably thinking this too. Had we played the whole year with this guy, what would our record have been? Would it have been a little bit better?
Yeah, right.
Which is like us the last couple of years. Had we just played this guy the whole time and just said, let's just see what happens, let's just see what happens.
Exactly, yeah.
Anyway, Hal was installed as the starter again. There was no determination of who the backup is yet.
Right.
Fromm was last week because Brissett, couldn't get through the workout in the morning. We'll see what happens this week.
Brissett had his pads on, though. Was he technically the emergency
third quarterback? Right. He was the emergency, which, if you really wanted to go down a rabbit hole and go, if he was healthy enough to put the pads on and potentially go into the game, then why didn't he?
I mean, if you're
I just don't even want to do that, though.
If you're the emergency quarterback, though, and all you have to do is hand the ball off, I mean, if it got to that point.
Yeah, but if you really want to play the whole thing down the line, just go Logan Thomas as our emergency third quarterback.
I've been waiting for that. I've been wanting to see
Logan's
a little of that.
like, I am?
Yeah. Wildcat time.
He's like, who brought me into all this? I've been quiet the whole time. Anyway, all right, so that's happening this week. Hal's going to finish it out. It's notable. This is the first time in 6 years that this team has had a quarterback start all 17 or 16 at that point, but all the games of the season. So it's been a while.
Yes.
Last year, we know what happened. Year before that, Fitzpatrick got hurt in week 1, so we don't know what would have happened there. Yep. Year before that was Haskins started, but we all knew there was no chance he was going to play every game. Year before that was Case Keenum started the season because Smith was hurt. That was his injury season. And the year before that, Smith was the starter, but then he did get hurt. So there's caveats to all of it. Like there were major injuries that took place in some of these things.
Can we name all of them? Do you know all of them?
All the quarterbacks starting from Alex Smith?
Alex Smith, Mark Sanchez, Josh Johnson.
See, this is the tough one because the end of that year they got weird.
Josh Johnson started like the last 3 or 4 games.
Something like
Sanchez
that.
got hurt like 1 game in.
He was terrible.
I think Colt was still there too.
He started a game?
I want to say he did.
The first year of Rivera was Haskins, Allen, Smith, Heineke.
Yes.
All of them started.
And did you say Allen?
Allen, yeah. Haskins, Allen, Smith, Heineke, all of them started a game.
Right.
Then the year after that was Fitzpatrick, Heineke, right?
Right. And
was that it, or did Allen play?
No, that was Gilbert. That was the COVID.
Garrett Gilbert came in because we had
year.
a COVID game, right? And then last year we had Hal and who else?
All right,
Heineke.
So 2018, I got it right. Those was those four: Smith, Johnson, Colt McCoy, Sanchez. Colt McCoy started 2 games. The following year, we had it: Keenum, Haskins, McCoy actually started 1 game there. 2020, on it: Smith, Haskins, Allen. Heineke's technically not listed, but he started the
playoff game.
Heineke, Fitzpatrick, Gilbert for the following year.
And then last year we had Wentz, Heineke, Howell.
Yep, exactly.
All started games.
And now this year it's just Howell.
And now this year. Holy moly, everybody.
Yeah,
holy moly.
Great.
All right, so here we are.
They had Kirk start 16 games 3 years in a row, and then it grated on them.
Well, they kept calling him Kurt.
Right.
And, that was immaturity at its finest. Really is what that was. We don't think he's cool enough to be the quarterback of this team.
Correct.
That's all that was.
Yeah, right.
And
now, look at him now.
He's
corny cool.
Corny cool. Beyond corny cool.
Taking his shirt off doing skull.
He's a whole nother genre of
You
cool.
saw that the other night, right?
I did see that.
Let's keep with this kid, though.
I saw somebody tweet something like, they ought to give you an extension for that. I was like, that sounds about right.
Yes.
Yeah. For pulling that off without, I was like, he probably should have.
Good for him, though.
All right, so we mentioned Alex Smith today. Ron Rivera didn't answer much. He was asked about his future. He was asked specifically, do you want to be a head coach after Sunday? And he didn't answer that question. He actually said, we'll cross that bridge when we get there, which could just be vaguely, I don't want to talk about that stuff right now,
right.
or it could be, I don't intend to be a head coach beyond this. I don't know. We'll wait till Monday. We'll find out what he thinks. Or Sunday night or Monday, we'll find out what he thinks about all that. He was asked a lot about the future again. He kind of dodged it, didn't really say much about it. I don't blame him. I mean, what's the point? He can talk about all this stuff after the season if he really wants to. But the one thing that got him going today was he was asked about finding the quarterback, which it's been, as we just described here, a long, arduous search. And it's come up with no real answers, because as we sit here today, even with Hal having started every game now, assuming that he does, get through the week, because we saw what happened last week, but we assume he gets through the week and starts every game here. I don't feel any more clear about the future quarterback than I did at the beginning of the year whatsoever. In fact, I am more confused about it than I think I was at the beginning of the year, because there were periods of time that Hal did look really good.
Yep.
But he could not sustain it for 17 weeks. That's not all on him. But it is the fact of, the reason why he was benched twice and was going to be benched for good as of a week ago was because his play had dropped off so dramatically. But at the same time, I don't forget about the Philadelphia game or the Seattle game or the multiple 300-plus yard days or all the rushing touchdowns. And, honestly, like his completion percentage was actually very good through the middle of the year.
The play calling, too, I think you factor in as well.
Yeah, I think the play calling comes into this, the roster management, the offensive line, like all of that comes into play for all of this for sure. But as the season progressed into December and we've seen what's happened over the last 5-6 weeks, I don't know whether he's an answer or not.
Right.
Granted, if they end up with the second overall pick, I think we know what's going to happen, that they're going to take a quarterback one way or the other, whether they try to move up to number 1 or whether they just settle and take somebody at number 2. I don't know how they wouldn't. And so that's probably going to answer what the future is at quarterback. But what if this stupid strength of schedule thing makes them pick 3rd?
Right.
Like, then I guess we'll just have to find out. And so Rivera was asked about the quarterback position. And remember last year, he even brought this up today during his press conference. He was asked about, he said, I got a lot of grief last year when I said, what's the difference between, them and us and whatever. And he said quarterback. And everybody was like, but you picked Carson Wentz.
Right.
And he deserved a lot of grief for it because you went and got a $30 million a year quarterback. Remember? Correct. You told us he was the right guy for the team. We all told you that what we saw the last year in Philly and the first year in Indianapolis didn't look like you got the guy. Right. It looked like you got broken down goods. But, but you told us you found him and you were going to fix him and everything was going to be fine. So it didn't ring very true at the time. Because you could say that if you're in Minnesota's case right now where Cousins is hurt and there's all these different guys playing and you're just kind of stuck. Well, that's not what happened with Wentz. Wentz just wasn't very good, and then he broke his finger, and you were so reluctant to bring him back out on the field because you knew he wasn't very good.
Right, exactly.
And he was your choice. And even if Fitzpatrick was your guy, it was only going to be for a short term anyway. We knew that.
It was a one-year deal.
Right, 1 year deal at $10 million a year. He's like paying a bargain rate again for a quarterback, and we don't know what happened there. So he brought that up, and he said, I don't have the transcript in front of me, but I'm paraphrasing a little bit. But he said, if Alex Smith didn't get hurt, he said Jay Gruden would have been here longer, meaning he never would have been hired.
Right.
Because, all things being equal, he would have been fired in Carolina, and this job wouldn't have been open, is what his point is. That's what his point is. He said that. So, do you agree with that?
I agree with it, but it's also like
Alex Smith what was their record when he got hurt? 7-3, something like that. 6-3, 7-3, it was something like that.
6-3 sounds right. They were not like, they were not like 9-0.
Also, not unlike Hal, Alex Smith had done this a million times, so him, faltering late in the season would not have been a predictable thing to happen. You would have assumed he would be fine as the season progressed.
Right. I don't disagree with him, but it's also like, I don't know. If I went to a better college, I might have a better job. Like, this is such an if statement. And you also don't know what the rest of the personnel on this team was going to look like either.
True. Well, I mean, is he right, though, that if Alex Smith didn't have the injury that he had, which essentially ruined his career, it's amazing he came back from it, but essentially ruined his career, would Jay Gruden not have been fired? I don't know. We don't know. You don't know how that season would have played out when they were 6-3.
Right.
And then it's the following season he was hurt, and they started Case Keenum and drafted Haskins, and nobody wanted Haskins on the football side, so they started Keenum anyway, and they started 0-5, and they had damn good culture, and it all just went kaplooey.
Right, but they could have drafted Haskins regardless.
They were a tinderbox. Same thing this year. They were a tinderbox that year by the way that they acted. They were not working in conjunction with one another. We knew this from the get-go.
But imagine if they had drafted Haskins anyways.
Yeah, I guess they could have, but if Alex Smith was still playing, Haskins would have been in development and wouldn't have been starting.
Sure, they still would have drafted him.
And they would have had Alex Smith there, and he would have been under contract for another year, and then it would have been like the Mahomes thing. They were going to put him in a position where he was going to have to basically tutor the next, what they hope is their Mahomes for a year.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, he's probably not wrong, but why is
I don't think he is. I don't know why he's saying it.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm saying. And if I had gone to a better college and gotten a master's degree, I'd have a better job.
Here's the quote. The transcript just got sent. Thank you for the timing of that. He said this. He was asked how difficult it is to find the guy at quarterback in his time here after having Cam Newton for as long as he did in Carolina. Okay. And he readily admits he's like, we had the guy, and I'm not suggesting, he's like, Cam Newton was great, is basically what he's saying. He said, in all honesty, that's probably the biggest crux of it all here, trying to find that guy. It's the hardest thing for anybody. It doesn't matter whether you're here or you're at one of the other places that are looking for this guy. You're fortunate if you get a head coaching job where there is a guy, and you better relish that and you better succeed. I'll tell you that right now. I've said this before. If you know a guy like Alex Smith, if he never gets hurt, I never come here because I think Jay Gruden and what they were doing would have continued. I mean, when you get a guy like that, you run with it. I promise you. It would have been cool to have had a guy like that. It really would have, because I think there's a lot of talent in that room, and I think there's some good playmakers. And in the last 4 weeks, we've only given up 3 sacks. Well, now he's defending the rest of the whole thing of this part. But that's the crux of it. He basically says, had Alex Smith been here healthy, Jay Gruden wouldn't have been fired. I never would have come here in the first place.
Yeah, and I would have countered that with what's the point of you even saying that? Jay got you fired. Right? Or
yes, Jay was the head coach.
Or no, was it Callahan by that point?
Callahan. They had gone to they had already blown
up.
So
this is what I'm saying. It doesn't make any sense of him saying, if he's kind of trying to say in another world, Alex Smith doesn't get hurt. You guys don't even deal with me. Except we have been dealing with you, Ron, for 4 freaking years.
Okay, and the other thing that I think is hard to defend for him when he says this, I don't disagree with that statement. It is possible that, had Alex Smith never gotten hurt, because he's not a top 5 quarterback, but he's a very good NFL quarterback. Obviously, he'd been to the playoffs a bunch of times. It was trending that way here with him. There was a period of time where you could argue he might have been the best quarterback in the division for a period of time there, marginally, but close, right? Okay. So I agree with him, but how does that change? You had 4 years to find somebody like that, and you didn't, and you made the decision. See, Alex Smith that acquisition occurred under Bruce Allen's watch.
Right.
Jay Gruden complained about the Dwayne Haskins pick because it wasn't his choice.
Yes.
the Alex Smith trade, whether he wanted him or he didn't want him, I don't remember. I'm sure he did, but like I don't know how he felt about it at the time. But also wasn't his choice. Right. Bruce Allen and the front office made that choice. Here's where it falls short for Ron. You're the front office,
right?
So if you're saying, had we had this guy, like things would have gone differently, but you're the one that was in charge of finding him, and you didn't, and it wasn't for a lack of trying. You did bring in 2 veteran quarterbacks that were, I don't know, kind of Alex Smith's level. Maybe Fitzpatrick was a step below that, but he's an NFL quarterback at the time. Wentz was definitively of his level, and for a short period of time, better than him. Right. It had fallen off significantly by the time that they brought him in, and they were dealing with damaged goods. But those were your choices.
Correct. What I also don't understand why he went there, because it's like, yeah, and if RG3 had not gotten hurt, Mike Shanahan would still be the coach here probably, or would have been the coach for 5 more years.
Yeah, I guess you could really say that about anything, really.
That's what I don't really understand here is like, okay, and also like I would turn it back around, and if you hadn't run Cam Newton into the ground, he might still be playing. Like, I don't know, man. Like, what was the point of saying that? There's so many what-if questions in the NFL. Yeah, why is that the one you went to?
I mean, I see one coming for the Giants here where they're going to go, if we had the quarterback, and they're going to go, but you gave Daniel Jones the extension, so you have to live with the decision that you made.
Right. So,
that was your choice.
Right.
He chose to go after Fitzpatrick and try to get a $10 million quarterback to be the answer. They chose to go after Carson Wentz. I know they tried to get others, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And that's still on you, too. Your front office needs to make this stuff happen. If you really wanted Matthew Stafford, you had to go better than the Rams. You chose not to.
Correct. Yes, exactly.
The reality was Stafford was coming here. The Rams swooped in and gave him a better deal.
Right.
And the Lions, look where they are.
Of course.
Wisely took that deal.
Right, they gave him a starting quarterback.
You think the Lions didn't go to Washington and say the Rams are offering this? Can you do better?
Yeah.
And they said no.
Right, exactly.
So, and then they turned around and signed Fitzpatrick because they got stuck. They thought they were getting Stafford. They didn't. So I hear him. I agree on the premise. If Alex Smith never had the type of injury that he had, would Jay Gruden have been fired? It's hard to know, but you'd be more apt to believe that Gruden's record would have been better than it was by the end of it. And because it was the first coach that Dan ever extended, because they like to party together, I think they would have been okay with one another, right? And plus, he had a track record of their offense at times with a good quarterback was explosive, especially under Kirk.
Sure.
I mean, it was. So... But he made the decisions at quarterback. And what's done is done. Alex Smith did get hurt. They did spiral. They had the damn good culture year. Everyone went crazy.
Right.
They made the change. They bring him in for stability. The stability that he needs to have on the field starts and ends at quarterback. And he's the one who never found the next Alex Smith for them.
Correct. Well, and also to pile that on.
And Alex Smith was not drafted by the Redskins.
Correct.
Alex Smith was acquired via trade by the Redskins.
Not only that was the front office, and Jay didn't pick the players.
Correct. That's my point earlier, too. That's my point about this. Like, I hear what he's saying. I don't disagree with him. But, the hard part is you don't have your Vinny Serrato, Bruce Allen to blame.
Correct.
You're the front office.
You're the one that took Jamin Davis. You're the one that's taken all these first-round picks. You're the one that's made every other roster decision.
You're the guys who got hypersensitive when Scott asks a question about Carson Wentz airmailing passes in training camp.
Right.
When he's been airmailing passes for 2 different teams prior to coming here, and you're trying to tell us that he's going to be great again. Make Carson great again.
I'd say that's Jason Wright, not Ron. That was more.
He was sensitive about it too.
Yeah, no.
He was.
But
not in that way.
Yeah, right. One was more sensitive
than
the other.
He didn't pull out the rocket launcher.
That's right.
But he was very set because it was his pick.
Yeah. Right.
And Jason was just trying to stick up for the team. He tried to take one for the team there. That's all.
But it was dumb.
Yeah.
It was such a dumb decision.
It was an overreaction. Because
Yes.
if you go back and you listen to the questions he asked, you may not have liked Scott's tone.
Sure.
But the questions were not out of line.
Correct.
At all.
And also,
especially because it'd be one thing if it's like, I saw what I saw last year. I saw what I saw last week in training camp.
Right. And also, had you just waited a day, the news cycle was going to cycle it out anyways. But instead.
Someone asked Carson Wentz, are you inaccurate? That's happened 15 times a week for the last 3 years.
Right. Exactly.
Listen, I said this yesterday off of his press conference yesterday where he's asked about the culture. Mm-hmm. It's a trap question for him now. he can't talk about is the culture improved because the wins and losses don't look very good. The record is as bad, if not worse, than the year that they hired him.
Yep.
We're having a lot of questions about the roster moving forward. They don't have the guy at quarterback. That is very clear. You can maybe take a position that let's give Hal another shot with another person. All right, I'll hear that out. And considering, the way he played for a stretch of time and the fact that he's on, a very, amenable contract, then I'm all for bringing him back and let's see what he's got next year. But you can't sit here and say he's definitively the answer. No way. How could you come to that conclusion? You can't.
Right, you can't.
You can't, which is why when they're picking second, if that ends up happening, they're taking a quarterback. And I don't even think it's even in question that they're going to take a quarterback.
Right.
I feel for him a little bit in this. I always feel I go to these because I want to hear what they have to say because they're unusual. And, it's not that I'm like, I do feel like a little bit like a rubbernecker on the, the beltway. You see an accident and you slow down and you look at it because it's an accident, and it's hard because he's forced to go up there and answer questions. And some of the questions are positioned in a way that, like, you kind of can't answer them. Like asking him about the culture, he's hung himself by using that word for all these years. So it's just going to be brought up. And what's he supposed to say about it? They're 4-12. They're obviously not in a better place than when he started. So what can he say about it?
Right.
Is it fair? Could he say, I navigated a very tumultuous time in this franchise's history? Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think so.
Absolutely
and actually, that would be, that's the badge I think he gets on his crest, is that he actually stood up there and dealt with as unusual and horrific news cycle of a sports organization you could possibly have for 3+ years. And I think he deserves the Medal of Honor for doing that because he did nothing to embarrass them. He's the one that had to stand up there and answer all these questions because the ownership wouldn't.
That's right.
So he deserves a lot of credit for that. But what happened on the field is on his watch. And yeah, I'm sure there were limitations along the way. Welcome to any NFL front office. It's not carte blanche anywhere you go.
Right.
If you even without the issues that were swirling around the team, it depends where you are. Like some teams are notoriously cheap and won't do the type of things you need them to do. Others will go actually too far and allow you too much leeway to do too many things that blow up in your face. Go look at what Tepper and those guys are doing down in Carolina, where they do crazy things and it blows up in their face. So much so they throw martinis on fans from other teams. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I feel for him, but I don't know. I feel like I'm watching the end, and so I wanted to be there. So I stuck around to watch the entire press conference because I just wanted to see how he handled it. And I've said this a million times. I really like him a lot. I was rooting for him. I think they made a lot of mistakes this year coming into the season that I've talked about throughout the year. I think he set up a tinderbox.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this was the main.
And this is my biggest issue with Ron, the GM. I think he set up a tinderbox, and then he took his hands off the wheel as the coach.
Right.
A little too much, and no kidding, it crashed.
Right. Well, and this the other part of this too is all the things you just named that he gets the Medal of Honor for dealing with all the off the field BS. He had none of that this year.
That's right.
This was the one
year was better.
Where all of us said,
"Oh, they're throwing parades for the team."
Right. You have a new owner and you have nothing to deal with off the field. And this is your team that you built with your guys. And it completely backfired and went up in flames by week 3.
The new owner bought a round of beers for a bunch of people at a bar the day that he signed. And people were like, the skies have lifted.
That's right.
They were like, we've never heard of such a thing.
There's never been a more carefree year in this town in my lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, everyone's going to take it week by week. But still, overall, everyone, the vibes couldn't get better.
No.
And you completely fumbled the bag.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, for all the things he did great and held it together off the field, this one last year, this is why I asked this question.
This was his chance to actually rocket launch it, and he didn't. And there's just so many ways that I was seeing, like, the way they were laying the groundwork for it. Like, I get there were some limitations. Like, I want to be fair about this. Like, I don't think he could extend some people he wanted to. I don't think they could have gone out and done major free agent deals because of the situation they were in. So I understand those limitations, and there may have been a couple things he would have liked to have done differently. But that's anywhere. Like, that's not just here. That's anywhere. You don't know what's going on with these teams, and sometimes they're willing to do this, sometimes they're not willing to do this. You don't know. But I hear him on that little part of it. But all the other stuff that he was under his control, there were a lot of things that were red flags that were put up that I was talking about throughout the entire offseason going, he set up a tinderbox. It's just going to take a match, and it's going to go one of two ways here. This is either going to rocket ship off if they're right about how and the defense performs like we expect it to, or it's going to explode.
Right.
And it unfortunately exploded on him. And so to have any explanation of it now is going to be very difficult for him to do.
Of course. And also, it all still boils down to what went wrong this year. It was the defense, and he's the defensive coach.
Yes.
And his handpicked guy was Jack. And for all the things we talk about the offense, it was the defense that let them down because that's what was good for the last 3 years. Like, what do we always say? It's Ron time around what? Week 6, 7?
That's right.
Things usually clean up.
Yes.
If the defense was bad, it was cleaned up.
Mid-October through to December,
right.
Ron time, that's when they go 5-2.
Right. And instead, they were already up in smoke, and then it really got going after that. So,
well, it was funny this year because the Bears game was it.
Right.
And like at that point, that's when I went, I'm shook, and there's just no way I'm going to try to predict what they're going to do from here because if they're capable of doing this, they're capable of doing anything. But what I did hang on to at the time was I have 3 previous years of evidence that this is the point of the season where he actually turns it around. And they actually won the following week after that Bears game.
Right.
They beat Atlanta. And at that point, I went, okay, we're fine. And he'll eke out 3 or 4 more wins because that's what always happens with him. And this time it just did not play out that way.
Well, also, that Bears game was so bad, even after they beat the Falcons, we were sitting there going,
I don't trust it.
I don't trust them. Yeah, because it was so bad.
Yeah, or like I remember coming out of it going, had they played Heineke,
right.
It might have been, I don't like Ritter. I don't think he's a good quarterback.
Yep, exactly.
So anyway, all right, let me take a quick break. I want to talk about the Eagles for a minute, and there's a couple of really good pieces about the Bears' decision that they're facing, whether to trade Justin Fields or to keep him and trade the first overall pick. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Adam Schefter, confirmed Week 18 starting quarterbacks so far. Blaine Gabbert, Jeff Driscoll, Carson Wentz, Nick Mullins, Trevor Siemian, Easton Stick, Tyrod Taylor, Sam Howell, Mason Rudolph, Jarrett Stidham, and then he didn't have on the list because the Ravens just announced that Tyler Huntley is going to start. That's not a surprise because the Ravens already wrapped up the 1 seed. Tyler Huntley is going to start in place of Lamar Jackson. The thing that is maybe just a touch offensive about this is Sam Howell has started every game of the season for the Commanders, and every single other quarterback on this list was not the opening day starter and was never expected to play at all unless it was a situation like this.
Technically was benched, though.
He technically was.
I'm just saying.
For 48 hours. Not even.
Well, longer than that.
36 hours.
Yeah, Either way, I mean, he wasn't supposed to start last week.
These are these moments where I wish like you could just find out the real truth, because this is the second year in a row this happened to Rivera, where at the last couple of weeks of the season, there was like a quarterback turnstile of people who may not play. We'll see what happens.
This one
was really...
I mean, that one's legit. Like, Brissett's not going to just take a step back. Like, he's hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, like...
Yeah.
He's not going to be like, I don't want to start and let Sam start. Like, he's a professional. He's not going to do that.
Well, he's definitely, if he's marginalized, the last thing he wants to do is go out there and...
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and get hurt so he screws up
because
a deal going
the 2 times
else.
you did see him this year,
right?
He, blew the doors off of a couple defenses for about a quarter and a half, which shouldn't really mean that much, but it does mean he's going to replicate this contract with somebody else.
I was going to say, it means somebody
he's going to get $10 million.
I'll say someone might throw him $20 million to be the starter.
Maybe. Someone gets desperate.
Right,
Maybe.
Exactly.
Possibility. Yeah. Possibility.
Because as we've talked about, there's like now after this weekend, I think the number is going to shoot to like 65, 66 starting quarterbacks in the entire league. So yeah, somebody's going to give him big money.
So let's see. A.J. Brown was cornered by the Eagles reporters today.
Well, because he said he would talk to them. He wasn't cornered. He finally was talking to them.
Because he didn't talk at the last couple weeks after the game.
Yep.
There was a long piece in the Philly Inquirer. There's been a few pieces the last few weeks, but there was a long one yesterday basically saying that the frustration in the locker room is really based around him and his frustration.
Right. And
he is, maybe arguably the best offensive player on the team. I mean, him or Hurts.
Sure.
Take your pick.
Yeah, right.
Take your pick there. But he was having an MVP-like season by the middle of the year.
Right.
Anyway, he said this. He said he didn't speak to the media after the loss of the Cardinals because he didn't want to be negative. And he says his on-field frustration isn't about play calling or the coaching. He said it was due to wide receiver Devontae Smith's injury and that he apologized to his teammates because he put them in a position to answer questions about him. He said He also addressed his relationship with Nick Sirianni, and he said that that the Eagles players, because you'll recall this, Sirianni said after the game against the Seahawks when they lost, remember they threw a bomb at the end of the game to try to get into field position. Sirianni said, we did that on purpose to try to draw pass interference to get into field goal range. That's what he was basically saying, or to get in range. And he said today that Sirianni didn't do that. He said, we improvised and did it.
Okay.
So Sirianni stuck up for him and made something up, is what he's saying, stick up for his players.
Okay.
He also went on to say that he has all the respect in the world for the coaches, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and that he believes the team still is right there to win and that they're good to go.
Okay, until we see you bitching on the sideline again when you haven't caught 15 balls by the second half.
The end of season autopsy on them is going to be fascinating.
That's what I'm saying. The number one storyline to me in the offseason is, what does Roseman do? Like, that's seriously, like,
why did this happen?
Right.
You know, when you have a really good team that has 11 wins, even if things are not perfect, and they're not, why did it unravel like this?
Right.
Like, why are you all collectively losing it? How did you lose at home to the Cardinals last week?
Well, give up 29 points in the second half.
Right, but how does that happen?
Right.
You're like, I mean, come on. Like, get it together, guys. Keep your composure. What's wrong with you?
Right.
So, anyway, so that one's going on. And then Sirianni is getting questions about his future all of a sudden.
I told you that. I don't know what the odds are, but I wouldn't. Roseman has to make a move here. So is fire Sirianni? Is it trade A.J. Brown? Those two things are on the table. I'm convinced of it.
So, okay. So here's the big question, because they were a machine last year.
Yeah.
They lose both of their coordinators.
Sure.
They changed both their coordinators. I picked the Cowboys to win the division for that reason and that reason alone. I said, there's just no way that anyone just does that and you're just totally the same. They weren't. They've now cratered. Was the success of their team not Nick Sirianni, but those two coordinators? And now that those coordinators are gone, that you've exposed Sirianni as just an average head coach.
Right. Well,
Is that what's happened here?
Well, I mean, that's a questionable thing to call him an average head coach when he picked the previous two coordinators. It is a literal team effort, but he might have picked the two wrong coordinators to replace the other ones.
Well, he's already replaced one of them.
Correct. So
he put in place a guy who at least has one terrible relationship with one of his players on his team.
Right, exactly. So I wouldn't call him an average head coach, but it's a leadership thing. Like, I don't know. I don't know what exactly.
I don't know what it is either.
There, but
I need to get Nagandi on. He'll break it down for me.
The other part about all of this too is I thought Mike Greenberg made a good point. I think it was yesterday on his show where he said sometimes you just have a really good year and everybody's clicking on all cylinders, and then you realize things aren't as good as you think they are because it's not everyone on the same page. And is this one of those cases where last year they were just so good from the jump to the end of the season that it was just kind of their year without them actually winning the Super Bowl, and they're actually worse than they realize.
It's weird, though. They've got everything that they need.
Yeah, the personnel's fine. That's how they've won 11 games,
they've got, I mean...
They show up, and they're better than 90% of the league.
Their offensive line is top 5, if not the best.
Right.
Their quarterback is plenty good enough.
Sure, top 10.
Yeah. A.J. Brown's a top 5 receiver. Devontae Smith is an incredible number 2.
Yep.
Their tight end's as good as anybody's, really, or good enough. He's not Kelsey, but he's good enough. He's as good as anybody's.
Right.
The running back stable that they have, considering their offensive line and their running quarterback, they don't need to have an incredible running back, and they do just fine with those guys. I don't think that's a problem. Their defensive line should be really, really, really good. It wasn't. Mm-hmm. Should be.
Yep.
Should be. Considering the draft picks that they have, the people that they have out there should be good enough.
We know how that feels.
Yeah, their linebackers are okay, but they drafted one high.
Yeah.
And their corners and safeties should be good enough. It shouldn't be this bad.
Right, correct.
So what's wrong? And they still, now feels like fell into 11 wins.
Right, exactly.
Which just tells you if they just kept it together that it'd be better than that.
Yeah, exactly. And like we kept saying, oh, they're going to turn around. No, there was more the other way. They were barely winning those games because they were not together. So
yeah, I don't know. All right, let me get to the Bears for a moment here. All right, so they got a weird decision. The article's already starting to come out, and there's two very good ones that are out there. One, ESPN.com, from Courtney Cronin, who covers them, and Jeremy Fowler, who I guess they have swoop in and do these like investigative reports with them. He did one with Washington a couple weeks ago about Rivera and everything. and the Harris Group, what they're going to do. They came in and did that one together. So he did that with Courtney Cronin, and they kind of go through all the options and how the Bears feel about it. And because Courtney Cronin's part of it, she's basically positioned this with what all the teammates have said, which is they love him. You saw the fans have reacted to him. The numbers have changed significantly. They're 7-5 here over the last 12. All of a sudden, the coach is probably coming back, which means the GM is probably coming back. So this is a weird spot for them, but it sounds like they're feeling the good juju. They're feeling like the Lions from last year. We're going to turn this thing around. We do have our guy. He's our leader. All the players, like to a man, are like, we love the guy. So they're in a weird spot. The other piece that came out was from The Ringer, which was more distant, but it kind of went through the numbers and did a lot of deep dive stats and said, while his play has improved in this ways, here are the ways it has not. He's not taking as many sacks. He is getting rid of the ball faster. He's not throwing as many interceptions. However, and they did some other numbers that don't show that are all that great from him as a pocket passer in general. And then, but both of them readily admit this guy is a massive high ceiling talent. Like, that's obvious. And his running ability is second to none, maybe only to Lamar. Like, there's nobody else that can run like him. So he's got that crazy tilt play, capability in him to go along with. He is developing. His teammates really like him. Can you do much better than him? I don't know. And then The Ringer gets around to what I think is the crux of the conversation. It will be his fourth year. You get him at a cheap rate. You have to pick up his fifth-year option if you're doing this. That then starts the clock on real money. The fifth-year option is only in the 20s, which if you do believe he's your long-term quarterback and he's going to ascend and become a Pro Bowl-level quarterback, well, then $23 million is going to be a bargain. And then you'll run into, do we extend him? Do we do the franchise tag? That whole dance. But you got to make those decisions within a calendar year. You will pick up the fifth-year option, and then you're a calendar year away from going, do we play this out? Do we extend him now? All that type of game that they have to play. Or do you start the clock over with Caleb Williams?
Right.
Or Drake May, for that matter. He actually points that out.
Sure.
And their summation was you take the quarterback from the draft to start the clock over because it's not so readily obvious that he's Pat Mahomes or Josh Allen, that he might be, but then again, he might not be. And you're going to pay to find out the hard way whether he is or he isn't when you've got a 3 to 4 year window on this next person to find out if it's a better bargain for you.
Right.
And so their position is take a quarterback, probably Caleb Williams, take him, start the clock over. I hope that's not the decision they come to because I think we are very much in line to get Caleb Williams if they decide they want to stick with Fields.
Right. I mean, I'd make the argument here with them, the counterpoint to The Ringer, is that the Bears haven't found their quarterback anywhere close to being their quarterback. Their best quarterback since Fields is probably Cutler, right? Am I wrong in saying that? Their best starter, and even then he was good, not great.
Correct.
He was great at times, of course, but
he's like their all-time leading passer, and he's average.
Right.
They're the same. We're the same team.
Yes,
we can't find a quarterback.
Right.
We talk about Sonny Jurgensen and Sammy Baugh, and they talk about Sid Luckman.
Right, exactly.
It's the same thing.
So that would be my counterpoint, because if, let's just say, Caleb Williams and Drake May are busts, and then you trade Fields to somewhere and he blows up even more, you now have to watch that just like you watch Mahomes now, where
I think there's going to be a line out the door to get him, by the way.
I think
New Orleans, Atlanta. I don't. If we're the second pick, probably not us.
Only
but if
because
we're not the second pick, I don't know.
Only because the compensation's not going to be that crazy high.
It will depend on the coaches.
No one's giving them a first-round pick for him.
I don't. Well, you'll get a second, I bet.
Yeah. But I'm saying they're
because you have to pay him,
right? And so the team that you just mentioned will be willing to throw a second-round pick to hopefully get a quarterback that works for them.
No doubt about it.
Right. So
you could throw a second-round pick to get him and still use a relatively high pick on somebody else and let them compete and see how it shakes out.
Right. You could do that.
You could do that. I don't know what the right answer is. I think they're in one of the stickiest problems I've ever seen. If I'm them, I think I start the clock over. I do risk pissing off all of these young players that like him.
Fan base. Your fan base wants him back.
But the fan base, if in week one Caleb Williams throws for 330 and 4 touchdowns against the Packers, they'll have turned the page very quickly for you.
Right.
What they won't stand for is, and this is their legacies too, the front office that makes this decision. If Fields ends up being a Pro Bowl quarterback for somebody else, and the other person you pick turns out to just be average.
Yep, right.
And nothing really changed, then they'll have the forever we should have kept Fields.
Right.
If Caleb Williams comes in there as Pat Mahomes, well, they're geniuses. And they made the toughest of tough decisions.
But here's the problem. The main problem is your week 1 scenario usually doesn't happen with rookie quarterbacks, no matter how high they are drafted. And what's going to happen is it's going to be like here. It's going to be like 2 games of having 200 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And the crowd's going to start jumping on him. And it's not really going to be May or Williams' fault. It's going to be the fan base getting pissed off at the front office, and then all of a sudden things are going to spiral because you have a young quarterback that all of a sudden is feeling way more pressure than he should 2 weeks into his career.
I think this also comes down to, do they think their roster's good enough to win right now to bring in the rookie quarterback and deal with it for a year? Because here's the other reality. If you trade Fields, you get maybe a second-round pick. Maybe someone goes a low-end one, maybe. Right. But that's what you get. If you trade Caleb Williams, the pick, you get, if you want somebody who's not picking 2, 3, or 4, you get 3 to 4 first-round picks.
Right.
If you trade with the Commanders, you get Marvin Harrison and another whatever, and that's a lot of capital.
Right.
So I don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
We'll see. All right, I'll be right back. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630 at Sports Capital. I wish the conditions were different, but it is always really cool to be in the booth to call Washington-Dallas, which I'll get to do this weekend, seeing those colors line up against one another and add another chapter to the rivalry, and see how it plays out. In the same way that as just a humongous fan of the teams here, seeing those 2 colors skate around Pittsburgh last night was really cool to see, and we had a really fun game between the Capitals and the Penguins. It took me a minute to find it.
Hulu, ESPN Plus, not
I thought it was on TNT.
Tonight's TNT.
So I said TNT on the air last night, and then I went to my provider, and they were playing something else, and I'm like, is this blacked out? And then I went to the Monumental thing, and I'm like, what's going on?
Bullets were on Monumental.
It took me a while to figure out how to get it, and I finally got there. And then the Caps got out to a big lead, unusual. Like they've been complaining about not scoring. They did in the first period last night. Then they gave up what was a huge comeback. Looked like they were going to choke it away.
Correct.
But held on. A couple great penalty kills in the third period, and they won. Beat Pittsburgh 4-3 last night.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not ready. This is not unlike kind of how we were just talking about the Bears game, how we were never ready to call the Commanders competitive after that game. This is one where I blame it on Tristan Jarry, the Penguins goaltender. He was clearly not correct. They scored 4 straight goals on him. They took him out, and then everything settled down. So, yes, it was nice they scored 4, but I mainly chalk it up to their goaltender just not having a good night because then they didn't score for the rest of the entire game. So,
well, you were telling me yesterday our goaltender has given up a few these days.
Yes,
so you know what?
right.
What goes around comes around, and I'll take it.
He gave up 3. So, I mean, it's not like he had the cleanest day yesterday either.
No one thinks the Penguins goaltender's top tier anyway, right?
Jarry, no, but I would say he's
right.
good and has great moments. Yeah, I wouldn't chalk him up as being a top goaltender in the league by any means.
I also enjoyed last night. It looked like for a second Tom Wilson and Sidney Crosby were going to fight.
No, there was no chance. 0 chance.
It was pretty good, though.
0.0% chance Crosby ever will drop the gloves with that guy.
It was pretty good, though. And then Malkin tried to come in there, and Wilson gave him a look and was like, dude, I'll take you out, too.
It's also just like access of powers there. Like if Malkin goes after Wilson, Ovechkin's going to come over and be like, guy, leave him alone, and the Russian's going to listen to the Russian. Here's the thing with Crosby, too. Crosby, there are certain guys he doesn't like, and 2 of them are on this team. Martin Ferravari hits the crap out of him every single time they play each other, to the point where I don't know if you remember this last season, where Crosby went after him, did a cheap shot, cross-checked him across the chest out of frustration. And then there's another moment last night towards the end of the game where Crosby was in the crease, and Nick Dowd jumped him from behind too. So that's just another guy Crosby doesn't like. Last night just happened to be a game where Caps got the best of him. It was also the first time since 2017 Crosby and Ovechkin scored against each other. They had not scored in the same goal or in the same game in 6 years.
Yeah.
So turn back the clock for both of those guys.
Yeah, and they let the Ovechkin goal stand last night. That was great.
Yes.
All right, so good when they turn around and play the Devils. I'll ask you about that in a little bit.
Yep.
I got to read this quote from Rory McIlroy because it's just amazing. Boy, how you could have your tune changed when money gets involved.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Rory McIlroy was holding up the shield for golf, saying, this live thing is existential crisis. We can't sell our sport off.
Yep.
PGA Tour is where you get to make history.
Right.
You get to win majors. It matters here.
That's
this
right.
format is dumb that they're playing. They're only doing it for money, and by not playing in our tour, you're making a mistake and you're ruining your legacy. Okay?
Right.
Which everyone applauded him for doing so. Here we are a year later now that it's been basically bought by the Saudi Public Wealth Fund.
Correct.
And this was his quote. I think at this point, I may have been a little judgmental of the guys who went to live golf at the start. And I think it was a bit of a mistake on my part because now I realize that not everyone is in the position that I or Tiger Woods are in. We all turned professional to make a living playing the sports that we do. And I think that's what I realized over the last 2 years. I can't judge people for making that decision.
Cool. You sold out too, Rory. Great.
Like when we said the thing like Ron doesn't need to talk as much.
Right.
Rory, I would not talk about this.
I wouldn't say a word.
Because I actually think you were heroic for what you were doing. And now you sound like someone who is selling out like the rest of them because there's no way to stop what's happening.
Correct.
But it doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, wasn't Rory the one that was kind of holding out because we thought he was going to get compensated at the end of this anyways?
Correct.
Which is probably what happened. I mean, it's probably why he is saying what he's saying.
There was investment put into this, whatever thing he and Tiger have put together, and I'm sure there was probably some you need to shut up money.
Right. Yeah, of course there was.
Tiger hasn't said a word about the whole thing.
But don't worry. We've been told by other owners that they'll never say what you need to say.
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
They'll never
Right.
insert their opinion on any of this stuff.
I mean, this is, if there ever was a full-on example of it, here it is.
Yeah, of course.
Him basically saying I was too judgmental of the people that I went after, like Braveheart. And he was roundly applauded by every person
Everybody.
who was like, you're saving the sport, or at least trying to.
Right.
At least trying to. And here we are 2 years later where the money was so overwhelming and the spine of the people who run the PGA Tour was so weak.
Right.
That obviously what's happened. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it.
That's right. Exactly.
You could still be mad about this.
That's right. Yes.
There's nothing wrong with being mad about it.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Not let you play?
Correct. Exactly. Like, here, that's what I've been saying. Not shocked. Not shocked.
Sucker.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a sucker.
Yeah, you're just like the rest of them.
You're just like the rest of them, aren't you?
I do remember our conversation about this too. It was commendable what Rory was doing, but how could you personally go after some of these players when the amount of money was
That's what I
so
said.
ridiculous?
That's what I said at the time. I go, I don't have a problem with them doing this. Here's what I would do, though, if I'm the PGA Tour. Ignore it.
Yes, right, exactly.
Ignore it. Like, okay, so a couple of really good players left. Who cares? Nobody's watching this.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. It's just an exhibition. You know, like, who cares? You guys do exhibitions all the time that nobody cares about. Who cares? But no, they'd yammer on, and it just kept giving them oxygen, and then they got eaten by it.
Right.
Sucker. Sell out.
See what his bank account looks like after that one.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure it's got a nice deposit.
Oh, yeah.
Nice 8-figure check cleared.
Yeah. It's like, what's at the end of Office Space when he checks his bank account because he siphoned off all the money?
All the fractions
all
of
the
pennies.
fractions of pennies.
Yeah.
All the fractions of pennies showed up in
It's only going
Rory's
to be
account.
a little bit of money.
It's just a little bit.
Oh.
Oh, look at that. All right, let me take a quick break. I'll get into David Tepper next. He's the man. Brainwash the show. He's 6:30, the Sports Capital. At some point soon, they keep saying it's going to happen, a list of names that is associated with being on flight logs to Jeffrey Epstein's famous terrible island is going to be released, and it promises to be some very famous people, potentially a couple of ex-presidents and a lot of very other famous people. I would like to be the first to tell you you'll not see my name on that list. I also have never met Jeffrey Epstein. Don't know anything about him, never been to his island, and wouldn't engage in anything like that.
Thanks for clarifying.
Jimmy Kimmel also is not going to be on that list. Found out yesterday, though, that Aaron Rodgers called him out as potentially being on it.
Yeah.
And when that happened, Jimmy Kimmel threatened to sue him over it, saying, you put my family in danger for saying something as irresponsible as I'm a pedophile.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This happened, of course, on Pat McAfee's show yesterday where he just said that. Aaron, while I do find to be funny at times, I don't know if he's really all that sarcastic or could be taken as sarcastic because I can't tell whether he believes the things he's saying or he doesn't believe them.
That's right. Right.
See, that's the problem with his delivery. If you are sarcastic all the time, then we know you're just trying to be funny. But when you say things that are kind of off the reservation and you actually mean it, then we don't know you're trying to be funny.
Right. And not only that, Aaron's tone yesterday didn't sound joking either. It was the very matter of fact, like, oh yeah, his name's you're gonna see Kimmel's name on that list or something. Where it was like, excuse me? Like,
So the response today was to force McAfee to address it.
Right.
People keep laughing because he's wearing a full shirt today when he did so, like as if he had to go see the principal. Yes. Now, keep in mind, McAfee didn't say it. Aaron Rodgers did. But this feels old school now. Remember 4 or 5 years ago when somebody would say something ridiculous and everybody got mad at the reporters for not pushing back at the thing that was ridiculously said?
Correct. Yes, exactly.
Like that was a thing for a
yes,
while.
Correct.
Like somebody would say something, it was either flatly untrue, preposterous, or a total reach. And when the reporter would just blow through it and not challenge the validity of what that person just said,
ridiculous.
They got mad. And there's a million examples of that. So people, I guess, were a little mad that McAfee didn't push back at this. But like McAfee, I think, has a lighter version of Joe Rogan going. Rogan's thing is, Rogan gets this too. He'll have these people on who have these definitely alternative thoughts, right? And he lets them on his show.
Right.
And then they say whatever they want to say about horse tranquilizers, or there's actually 38 planets, or things in history didn't happen when they obviously did, whatever. And then he doesn't push back, and then people get mad at him and say it's dangerous. And then he says, I'm just asking questions.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
I'm not here to be a reporter. And that's where McAfee landed today, because the problem is he's on a network that wants to be taken seriously. Also, owns ABC as well, where Kimmel's show airs, and kind of needed him to push back yesterday, and he didn't. And so he came on today, not Aaron Rodgers, and basically stated that he believed that Aaron Rodgers was just talking you-know-what, and that it wasn't an actual allegation against Jimmy Kimmel, that's all he was doing, trying to say, my buddy here, who gets me really good ratings when he comes on, just made a bad joke. Don't you get it? But the problem is, Aaron Rodgers, all these things could be bad jokes, but actually, most of them aren't the things that he says.
Correct. He never was joking about the ivermectin or Covitos or whatever else you want to name.
Or that vaccines don't work.
Right, correct, exactly.
He's not kidding about that.
Calling Travis Kelce Mr. Pfizer and all of that stuff.
He's not kidding about any of that.
Right.
Or at least we don't think he is.
And my thing is, Bram, when you talk S with your friends, you definitely joke around about them being a pedophile.
Of course.
Like, come on.
There's a few things you don't do.
Like, my God.
Yeah. You can't call people racist when they're not. You can't call them pedophiles.
Right.
You can't make fun of their moms.
Right.
Like, there's a few things that are kind of red lines that you kind of can't do.
Your mama jokes, but I mean,
a few. But they have to be, they can't be too real.
Of course.
They can't be too real.
Right.
Everybody knows where the line is on it. So, Rodgers, I don't think he'll apologize, because I just don't think he will. He's not the type. No, he doesn't seem like the type. ESPN's in a pickle because the reality is everybody needs attention, and that Aaron Rodgers interview probably garners some of the biggest ratings and viral attention that the network gets these days.
Correct. Yes. And he hasn't played
clips from First Take,
one drive
clips from that interview.
Yeah.
Like, think about this. Like, McAfee, he gets a lot of attention there, but think about what actually goes viral with him.
Yeah.
It's actually just those interviews and a few things that have happened on game day.
Yeah, correct. I was going to say, it's not a lot from the show.
It's not a lot from that show. The game day stuff, he did an incredible thing at the SEC Championship where he trolled the Georgia fans and had them sing the fight song and then picked Alabama, which was amazing. It was really great. He put full WWE. This is not a criticism of him. I think he does a very good job. Yesterday, though, was a little too Joe Rogan for ESPN's I think, Constitution. I don't think they could take it.
Correct.
And after Kimmel responded the way he did, and he should have, because you just stated that you think I'm a pedophile.
Right. Exactly.
Well.
Right.
And this also does fall in line with this thinking from that side of the aisle that is pushed out there that all people who have liberal leanings are pedophiles. Like, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Like that. This is not something that's like out of nowhere or ha joke. Like, that's been going on for a long time. We had a weird situation 5-6 years ago at Comet Pizza because of this bizarre line of thinking that's been put out there. So, listen, Rodgers is off the reservation. He also is very entertaining at the same time. He is unusual, and he does something that most athletes won't do. He will tell you what he's really thinking about.
Right.
And that also is what makes it interesting. He's a star player. He's a Hall of Fame player. He also will. The reason why these things go viral every week is he says things that no other athlete will say.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
So, but how irresponsible was it? Well, extremely.
Yeah, of course it was.
Extremely.
Don't joke around about that.
So, will ESPN pull that interview, which is what people are asking? I bet they don't.
No, probably not.
Can they make Aaron Rodgers apologize? No.
Right.
He's not really their employee. So they did the next best thing, which was to put McAfee on there, but he didn't really apologize for it being said because he also didn't say it.
Yeah, he just said, he's just joking around.
He's just kidding around.
Just joshing with you.
He said, I understand why he feels that way, but he's just kidding around. The damage is done, though.
Correct.
The damage is done. And I'll be interested to see what they do because it is the biggest thing that happens on that show.
Right.
So are they going to really pull it? Probably not. Probably not.
Probably not. They might ask him to clarify next week. I think that might be a possibility.
They're going to make Pat ask him to clarify.
Exactly.
It.
Right. Exactly.
They can't tell Aaron Rodgers anything.
Right.
He doesn't even pick up the phone if they call him.
Correct. So
he's like, I don't work for you. I get paid by the McAfee show. That's what he's going to say.
Right.
Or he's like, I don't know who you are. I'm not going to be answering to you.
Yes. Right. Exactly.
But McAfee is going to be forced to go on the air and ask him.
That's right.
Can you clarify that you said this last week because it was a big problem? And they're probably going to try to yuck it up a little bit about
that, or we're going to get the actual proper statement on Twitter or something of, I didn't mean to I didn't think that was going to be taken seriously. I apologize to Jimmy Kimmel because at the end of the day, too, though, it is an ESPN interview, and he said that about an ABC employee.
Correct.
So they might even say to him, like, dude, we're paying you this much amount of money per interview. Can you please just throw us a tweet on this one? Like, and I bet you that might, and then
I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet.
Right, because they might even say, dude, just throw us a tweet. We won't even ask you about it next
They
week.
made McAfee explain it, but McAfee also, he probably didn't need to be made to. He knows this got really huge. And
Right.
so he wants to address it because he understands staying in news cycles. And also, he didn't say it. So he's got
Correct.
nothing to truly apologize for.
Right.
The only thing that everyone's mad at him about is, shouldn't you have pushed back at that? But to his point, he's like, we're just a couple of guys doing locker room talk.
Right.
Hey, I'm just, I didn't say it.
Right, exactly.
He said it, ha, ha, ha. Maybe it's funny, maybe it isn't. I didn't say it. I don't know. That's who's for me to judge.
Right.
That's what he's pulling.
We're just joshing around.
No responsibility.
Yeah.
The airwaves have lost this level of responsibility. There used to be this. It's gotten bastardized by the amount of different outlets that there are. It's part of the media ecosystem that's altered that I think kind of shook people a while back. They were accustomed to a lot of different rules, not unwritten rules, but rules. There will be ethics. There will be pushback. There will be both sides allowed to be heard for certain amounts of time.
Yeah.
And that's it. And because of all of the different outlets that are available now, those rules are gone. They're just gone.
Well, it's also
the fact that he would go on the air and jokingly call Jimmy Kimmel a pedophile and nobody would be aghast by it tells you how far beyond the media rules have actually changed. That it didn't even occur to Pat McAfee to go, whoa, slow down. What you just called him there.
Well, yeah, because it's also in today's modern sports and in news, it's the more of a douchebag you are, the more people react to it, and the more you get, clout for it, and
yes,
it all just snowballs.
And
you get more attention for it.
And the audience is rewarding it. And that's why a number of people have latched onto this. Started with hot takes, right? Which were semi-harmless, right? Skip Bayless trying to come up with something about LeBron James that would make him seem not as great as he is. All for the sake of he knew that when it went out there, people would react to it. But it's just a ruse. That's all it is.
He's done it so many times that everyone knows that Skip is being Skip.
Correct. Now but at first, people weren't onto it, but it worked. It garnered all this attention. It's turned into news television. News television has become this now too, unfortunately. And the places that seem to have some level of journalism ethics and aren't at least actively trying to do this get punished in the ratings.
Right.
So the rules are gone. And that's why it's ripe for something as ridiculous as that to happen on ESPN yesterday, where a star quarterback calls a late-night talk show host a pedophile.
Yep.
and nobody says a word about it. In fact, it didn't even stop the interview. They just kept going.
Yes, correct. Exactly.
Ha 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 ha. I bet that's going to get out there. They did. I bet you if you asked them the truth in the moment, they did not think that's going to be that big a deal. I bet they didn't. And upon reflection, they're probably like, maybe I should have seen that was a big deal because the alarm bell should have gone off in his head. There's a million times, because I'm on the air 3 hours a day, right? There's a million times that I've said something and gone, it's possible that someone's not going to like that.
Right. Sure.
I'm pretty careful, though. It's possible. There wasn't anyone yesterday who stopped for a second and was like, Aaron.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though. With that dynamic, I'm sure one or a couple of Pat's producers probably went, because I know how this feels, their internal siren goes off of, oh,
yes.
God, he just said that. But because of that interview, you're not going to interrupt that. You're not going to step in and
Nobody
say
is
something
getting
to Pat,
in the way of that interview.
Correct.
Because that interview is the reason why they're on ESPN now.
That's right.
Pat's show was becoming popular. It exploded thanks to the Aaron Rodgers interviews.
Right.
It is one of the very few non-game must-see things of the week that is literal sports talk. It's because he will tell you crazy things.
Yes, exactly.
Do I believe he was just trying to be funny? Yeah. Do I think that was a terrible joke? Yeah. Like, it's way off base. Granted, I don't know the history, but I'm sure Kimmel's probably gone after Rodgers a million times. However, and what Rodgers doesn't understand is, on his show, everything is automatically perceived as a joke. Right. Nothing is taken seriously. When you're on a sports television program like this, it all is, especially when, so am I supposed to take as a joke your thoughts on COVID?
Right, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
Because you're not being funny about that. You're actually being serious about that.
Correct, exactly. And you're the one that joked about being immunized, assuming that meant, vaccinated.
Correct.
Like, everything you say is meant to be taken seriously because you have all of these alternative thoughts, essentially. And
correct.
So
you've got all the answers.
So you're asking me to believe that all of a sudden when you're talking about the Epstein thing that you are the one that is just joking around. Like, I know you haven't been reading up on whatever websites you click around on, guy,
right,
that you think is on the list.
And the fact that he brought his name up, he probably did read it on some QAnon, adjacent Epstein list of liberals in the media who are on the flight logs when they don't know the answer to that. And he probably saw that and cited it.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually hope he does take him to court because it's a ridiculous. Sometimes you've gone too far, and this is one of those that goes too far.
Yeah.
The second this went on there, it goes viral. There's going to be a number of people that believe it.
Right.
Even after the log lists come out and his name isn't on it.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Like, he can't recover from it.
Yes.
He's already been labeled, you're a pedophile who went to Epstein Island. Meantime, he's like, I've never met the guy, and they're going to release a list, and my name won't be on it, and there will be some names, who knows why, that aren't going to be released. And then these people are going to say to him, well, you're one of those names that isn't going to be released, which I would say to them, why would they protect Jimmy Kimmel? It's not like he's the Sultan of Minnesota, but they're not going to believe you.
Well, yeah. And then I think I sent you an article or joked about an article. There was apparently like 4 names on the list that'll never get out because they begged the judge. So guess what? That side is going to lean towards
That's what
now.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
You're one of the 4.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to go, how is he important enough to protect him?
Yeah, right.
Who's protecting him?
Right, exactly.
Let me get this straight. Bill Clinton's name's going to be on this list, but they couldn't put Jimmy Kimmel's name out there.
Exactly. Right.
Oh, God forbid they find out. I mean, it's... I lament the media so much because I love being in it, and it's been my career, but the shape-shifting of what's allowed, permissible, and what the audiences glom onto now is hard to take. Because that thing happening yesterday was everything I hate about media at the same time, which is you have to go for things like this. I've never subscribed to it and never will. I will never make up crap just to say it, to hope that you will then tweet it out and make me more popular. It's ridiculous. Well, especially things that are dangerous like that, to say something about someone like that without any proof whatsoever of it being true. If he was, I get it. But he's not. And it's just so crazy to say it because there's people that are going to believe it. And that nobody on that show for a second stopped down and went, you need to clarify what you're talking about because that's a crazy allegation. It's not funny, actually.
Right. And we throw around the term full crazy sometimes. This is one of the times where it has gone full crazy.
Yes. You can't accuse people of that.
Right. Exactly.
You can if they did it.
Well,
and if they did, I want to know about it so we get them off the face of the earth. But
even if you did know about it, that's not the platform to blow
of course
it up
not.
on. That's
so
the other
ridiculous.
part about it. If he was right, that still wasn't the time or the place to do it. To just casually drop it.